Democracy doesn't stop during a crisis, and members of Parliament have had to adapt how they work. A limited number of MPs will hold an in-person sitting once a week on Wednesdays, and for the first time in Canadian history, there will be virtual meetings of Parliament on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The Clerk of the House of Commons says technology isn't where it needs to be for all 338 MPs to take part virtually. And in the UK, MPs have had to adapt too. Our Europe Bureau Chief Crystal Gamansing explains how the British Parliament has evolved how it does business.
Order! Order.
A familiar call out in uncharted territory. The pandemic forcing the UK House of Commons to embrace a radical shift. The chamber limited to 50 with an additional 120 MPs participating virtually.
The member for Cardiff West with his supplementary question. Kevin Brennan.
There were a few kinks.
I don't know if I caught any more of that than you did.
Altering the course after 700 years comes with challenges.
It is temporary. That is part of the point of this. This is whilst this crisis lasts.
Canadian politicians agree to meet weekly in person with 2 additional virtual gatherings.
We really are caught in a totally unprecedented position.
David Smith has spent his life studying and writing about parliamentary procedure. He says people must be able to see and hear politicians pitch and defend their positions, especially now.
If you can limit it now, why couldn't you limit it when the pandemic's gone?
Of course, nothing is happening without technology. Eyebrows were raised when the UK announced it was using Zoom, which has had instances of uninvited attendees disrupting meetings.
This is a public meeting. This is something that's usually broadcast around the world. It could be on YouTube, on Facebook. So the concerns are there, but they're not significant.
Security, accessibility, user knowledge. Most agree digital democracy is not perfect. But like everything right now, the priority is health. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
It's been 50 years since the first Earth Day was proclaimed, and look where we are. Economies around the world shut down because of a virus, and the only winner could be the environment. 5 decades ago, an estimated 20 million Americans took to the streets for Earth Day. There were calls to limit pollution, clean up garbage, and do more to protect the Earth. 50 years later, it is measures aimed at protecting people that are also protecting the planet, as Eric Sorensen explains.
In the history of environmental awareness, there's never been an Earth Day that has come closer to reflecting the intended dream. A day of cleaner air and simpler pursuits. Roads not choked with traffic, the air not filled with as much noise. In Paris, tourists once took the haze for granted. Now they can't be there to see the surreal postcard that is today's Eiffel Tower. In China, the Great Wall, its magnificence now under clearer skies. But it has all come from a terrible scourge. Chinese who wore masks for smog now wear them for the virus. COVID-19 has exacted a devastating human and economic toll. But on a day set out to consider the future of the Earth, the UN Secretary General says recovery and investment should be clean and green.
We must act decisively to protect our planet from both the coronavirus and the existential threat of climate disruption.
The pandemic shows that when humans change behavior en masse, it makes a difference. Satellite pictures show the dramatic reduction in pollution in China this year, with 500 million people under lockdown. A similar reduction in pollution in the industrial belt of northern Italy. The World Economic Forum says overall there has been an increase in air quality around the world.
But clearing the skies temporarily won't solve the climate crisis. Experts say climate is a longer-term and greater threat than the virus.
The impact on economy and human well-being is going to be much higher than this COVID crisis has ever had.
Wake up, honey.
A new campaign builds on the theme that our house, the Earth, is on fire, and we're ignoring it.
Have a good day.
Some say the changes brought on by the virus should help us reimagine the future.
This has been such a traumatic thing for the world that if we don't come out of it changed or better, then it's been a tremendous wasted opportunity.
Milan, Italy, hit hard by COVID-19, sees its future in the clearing skies, planning to transform major streets to reduce cars and increase bikes and pedestrians, a small step in the search for something good to come out of the pandemic. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
There's so much information surrounding coronavirus out there now. We know you have questions. Email your questions at globalnews.ca. Tune in to Global National or go to globalnews.ca/coronavirus now to find the answers.
Today I'm signing an order requiring folks who absolutely have to go out in public to wear a face covering. We have to use every tool in the toolbox, because if we get complacent, people die, the economy takes longer to recover, and those are the stakes.
I don't know why people don't understand why this is something very dangerous for everybody. Yeah. You need to wear a mask and protect by yourself and protect the other ones.
Anyone 10 years or older should wear a face covering that covers your nose and mouth. You know, this is about personal responsibility, but there is a fine associated with the order.
I mean, I have to protect my baby, so.
Yeah, because we have a baby in the way, so for us it's important to protect ourselves. But I think some people, they don't like to abide by that.
You know, and I think majority, will be compliant. I've seen it out here. Yesterday I was here in the evenings, and you see just about every other person with a mask on, and that's even before the city mandated.
I think a lot of people will try to take heed to it. If it lasts longer than 3 to 4 weeks, I'd say they're going to get tired of it.
And making sure you're protected.
You say there's a good chance that COVID will not come back?
We don't
know.
know.
Or if it comes back, it's in a very small confined area that we put out.
Well, the great thing is we'll be able to find it earlier this time. And I think that's what we're talking about. We'll find those cases earlier. So what Dr. Redfield said, we would be able to stay in containment phase. So I think we are assured that the CDC is putting in place today what we are going to need in the fall so that we can stay in containment if potentially the virus comes back.
And if it comes back, though, it won't be coming back in the form that it was. It will be coming back in smaller doses that we can contain. But what the doctor was saying, and I spoke to him at great length, he was saying if it should come back together, now you have a flu and you have the embers of corona. But in my opinion, from everything I've seen, it can never be like anything that we've witnessed right now. Would you say that's the correct statement?
Absolutely.
It's nothing like what we're talking about. What we've just gone through, we will not go through. You could have some embers of corona and you could have a big flu system. And if they combine, if they come together, it's not great, but we will not go through what we went through for the last 2 months.
Mr. President,
is that a correct statement?
I understand that the United States will certainly be more prepared in the fall, but how can you say that it won't come back in the same level that it has today?
What it is estimated, it might not come back at all, Jeff. It may not come back at all. He's talking about a worst-case scenario where you have a big flu and you have some corona. And if it does come back, it's not going to come back, and I've spoken to 10 different people, not going to be like it was. Also, we have much better containment now. Before, nobody knew about it. Nobody knew anything about it. We understand it. Now, if we have pockets, a little pocket here, then we're going to have it put out. It goes out, and it's going to go out fast. We're going to be watching for it. But it's all possible. It's also possible it doesn't come back at all.
What's the thinking here exactly?
Well, Rich, the rationale behind it is to basically limit competition for jobs as the U.S. reopens its economy. The president did give some details to the scope of the 60-day suspension. It would only apply to individuals seeking permanent residency. So those with valid visas or transit documents will be exempt. So will medical professionals and researchers, armed services, or those seeking asylum. Not sure, though, whether these restrictions would apply beyond green card holders, still this is going to affect thousands of would-be immigrants looking to permanently move to the U.S. and, of course, further delay the green card process as well. This as we see U.S. cases, as you mentioned, slowing down nationwide, rising just around 3%. To give you some context, that's just below the average over the past week or so. Total cases still amount to 835,000 in the country. New York, the epicenter, saw the fewest deaths in a day since early April, and the governor, Andrew Cuomo, there saying downstate New York now on the descent of the curve. He's now working with neighboring states like Connecticut and New Jersey to build a tracing army to track the virus's spread, and California also coming up with a similar strategy.
And Yvonne, in the early days of the coronavirus outbreak, Singapore's government was really praised for its effective response. There seems to be a reversal with virus cases there now crossing the 10,000 mark. So what is the government doing about this surge in cases, especially among migrant workers?
That's right. And we heard from the trade minister speaking to Haslinda earlier saying they're hoping to progressively open the economy in a month's time, but they still have to deal with this new headache here, which is these migrant workers living in these tightly housed dormitories, often 10 people per room. They share a kitchen area as well as bathrooms. So the government now looking for new ways to house these foreign workers as they deal with this crisis. And it's probably why we have seen the cases rise tenfold in the past month. We saw a third straight day of 1,000 or more new infections in Singapore. Earlier this week, the government did begin halting the movements of migrant workers into and out of their dormitories. They converted a lot of these military camps, vacant public housings into interim housing facilities for those who are healthy. So they already have moved some of those essential workers as well to other areas. We're looking at other parts of Asia as well. Over in Japan, we did also reach a grim milestone. The number of virus cases has now topped 11,000 and also overtaking South Korea's numbers as well. And that's despite Japan seeing a limited amount of testing as well. So that makes it harder to see the real scope of the infections right now. The country is under a state of emergency, but local governments have received hundreds of complaints about some businesses that have failed to close, particularly those pachinko parlors. And keep in mind, Japan is getting closer to Golden Week as well. That starts from late April to early May. This is a time where a lot of people go out and travel. And unlike other countries, Japan hasn't introduced fines for leaving homes unnecessarily at the moment. So there is this concern now that there's going to be a wave of tourists from urban areas that could rapidly worsen the situation, particularly in regions where most of the elderly live.